Good. Here we go. Check, check. Can anybody say that they hear me or not? Can you guys hear me? There we go. All right. The three of us are here. Appreciate you. Thank you. Right. Everybody see what I got? Just the start button. Slide. There we go. Look at that. Nailed it. Okay. So, waiting to see. You can leave it open. Yeah, there we go. We're gonna wait and see just for a moment whether I get anybody else who wants to swing in person. Also going to turn this audio down. Check, 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 check. I got two of you. Check, check. Can you guys hear me? Am I really quiet?
How about now? Is it louder now?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. That's better. I switched to the lapel mic, so hopefully it's good audio for you. All right. We'll see. It's real quiet in the office here, so we'll see what we get going here. How have the classes been so far?
Very good.
Yeah.
Good content, some good conversation. There's only been about 3 or 4 people in the office, and then I think about 3 or 4 people online for each session. But there's a lot of good conversation.
This material is some of the best material I think that we have. Sorry, I'm trying to figure out this audio to get the volume. I don't know how to get the audio higher. So I actually love this class. I teach a couple of the classes. I've taught some Ignite. I've actually taught 36-12-3 before, different sections of it. And then I'll actually be back in August, and we're going to start to work on teaching through the Shift class, which is a phenomenal class. If you're not currently reading the book Shift, I highly recommend you get a copy of it. I know Ryan talked about that at the last office meeting. But the market's shifting. Are you guys seeing that?
Somewhat, in some cases, but some of the clients I've been dealing with, we're still offering contracts at list price. But they're selling for overlist, and people are still paying transfer tax and things like that.
Yeah, it's sneaky because the market will shift sort of in a sneaky way. Like, it'll feel like that until it doesn't, and by the time it doesn't feel like that, it's already happening. That's that's the tricky thing. So the things you want to start to look out for are some of those leading indicators, which would be like back on market properties, price drops, those kinds of things, because we have a shortage of inventory, which is still leading to a little bit of that feeling that things are not changing as much as they actually are. But I assure you that the numbers and the data don't lie, and they tell us that it's changing. So, now is the time. Now is definitely the time. And the other thing is the sellers and the buyers are in a different emotional place. So the buyers their emotions are changing because they're seeing the buyers' emotions are changing because they're seeing the interest rates have gone up. Affordability has dropped. There's literally zero mathematical doubt. As interest rates have gone up, inflation is rising. So literally at the cost of bread, the cost of everything is going up. Their affordability is going down. That creates an emotional response to buyers. Whereas the sellers are still a little bit riding the high that you're describing, which is I think I can get more money. I think my house is worth 110% of its value, right? And so you have a mismatch of emotions, and that also can lead to some interesting outcomes, which we'll probably see happening over the next 30 to 45 days. So things to keep in mind. So we're going to start with getting into, and I just heard Fahad. I'm actually going to track him down and make him come to class. Where's Fahad? Can you go snag him? Go tell him he needs to be in my class. If you tell him I said so, he'll come. Oh, good. He can come after his closing. Perfect. All right. So trying to rally the troops here. So we're going to be talking about leveraging a database, leveraging a database. And really, like, what are your lead generation activities and how are you leaning into leveraging your database? Cool. Then tell him I'm teaching until 12. He can come over afterwards. I know his schedule. He's free. So let's see what we got here. Let's see if this.
Yeah, I'm calling in today because unfortunately, I tested positive over the weekend for COVID.
I feel for you because I actually just got free on Sunday. So yeah, I had it. It's no good. How you feeling?
Oh, I got some energy back. I just still have my head is still congested, but yeah.
It was no fun. It's definitely no fun. The energy is the brutal part. So this is just a little bit of an overlay of what we're going to do in terms of today's session. So we're going to talk about the power of a database. We're going to talk about building that and what that looks like. We're talking about feeding your database every day, communicating with it in a systematic way, servicing all the leads that come your way, and then we'll kind of wrap it all up at the end. I'll tell you. So, have either of you read the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, the red book?
Yes.
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 What are the five behaviors of a mega agent, of a millionaire agent? Do you know?
No, it's been a little while since I've read it. I don't recall.
Okay. So I'll tell you there's 5 activities of a mega agent, of a millionaire agent, and it is lead generate, lead follow up, go on appointments, negotiate contracts, and script and role play. Okay. This class, this 36-12-3, focuses on lead generation, lead follow up, and getting those appointments. All right. And so what Gary talks about in those books is that you need to build your database, you need to feed it every day. And so this particular session will be a hyper focus on the power of your database and being in control of it. To kind of why I was excited about this particular one, to put that in perspective, I actually don't really do a ton of day-to-day real estate agent activities anymore. What I do more now is I actually work as the chief sales officer for a real estate investment company, and I am in charge of their database, their communication, and all of the follow-up and all of the lead generation, lead follow-up that comes out of that database, and what we put into it and what we do to convert it. So this is a huge passion of mine. It's literally my day-to-day job, is this exact content. So so that's kind of fun for me. Let's see what we get here. Here's the ground rules. Just participate. That's all I'm going to ask. If it's a small group, let's at least participate, and let's have fun with it. So here's the activity that we're going to start with, which is like the where are you today? Do you have a copy? Oh, Aaron's here. Hi, Aaron. Do you have a copy of the coursework?
I do, yes.
Okay, cool. So this would be on page 4. This exercise is going to be on page 4. This is a really good, I like to call this an audit, but this is just a good like snapshot in time of where your lead generation is right now. And it gives you an idea of what you're currently doing, and what's working, what's not working. So here's the activity. You're going to list the lead generation activities you've completed during the last 24 hours. When you list them, I want you to note what your ahas were from listing those activities. What were your challenges? And then what could you do? What could you control over the next 24 hours? Okay. So it's 4 parts. What were the lead generation activities on the last 24 hours? How much time did you spend on those lead generation activities? As you list them, also note what your ahas are of what your activities have been. Make a note. What was the most difficult part of those activities? And then finally, we'll come back and we'll ask, what will I do differently in the next 24 hours? What can I do differently? So we'll take a couple minutes. I'll let you guys just kind of get your feet under you of like, where am I standing today in terms of lead generation? Write your notes. What'd you do? What was your lead generation activity? If the list is short, then your list of ahas and what you can do in the next 24 hours should be long.
Is the material on the Facebook group to be able to print out?
Is the material in the Facebook group? I can go ask Dave really quick. I'll go ask him. Hey, Dave, is the material for 3612.3 posted in the Facebook group?
For the material, no, I just make the announcement. Meg has it scheduled for all the time.
So on
Me, I put us the link for the update, uploaded recording.
So when on Meg's post, can you see if it had the material?
That's it.
So it doesn't have that.
We never have the material or anything. It's just this.
So the documents that you have as PDFs that you printed there, could you upload it to that post? Could you upload a link to that post? Because it's actually available under my KW is where that stuff is, or under KW Connect. So you may be able to find it there. Could you, if you could, that would be super helpful. All right, I'm giving a shot, Bob, to get it to you. If not, you guys can get it on under the Keller Williams University on KW Connect. That's where it would actually be. In the meantime, let's share. Who can share with me? That's the rule. Small group. We have to all participate. So, who wants to share? What were the lead generation activities that you did in the last 24 hours?
Hi, everyone. I'll go ahead and kick it off. So I've done a few things that I like to do within the 2-3 hours that I prospect. Some of those are, one I like to do is I at least like to message 5 people on Messenger on my friends list. And I track, if they're looking, if they worked with the realtor and what's that realtor. And when they're looking to buy. And also I just let them know, they can keep me in mind or know any friends or families. And then I move on to direct mail, and I send out 10 letters to in a farming group near me. And then I move to one cold call. And then after that, I try to do some type of marketing, whether it's just a video or a post or something, just to get, stay in front of people's, stay on the streamline, whether it's Instagram or Facebook or my business page. And then I just go into my database and I follow up with any leads that I haven't caught up with or clients that I'm working with directly.
That's a pretty impressive list. That's a pretty disciplined process. What was your aha as you were going through and you were listing that out? What did you see in the way that you were doing your lead generation?
Well, ahas with the mailers, and I got this, I think, a couple classes back. So I just right now with it being, when I started this farm group and I started this like little template, letter, I'm targeting sellers. But, it was just generally, a seller's letter. But what an aha was to me was that I want to circle back around with that letter and then maybe send some comps in that neighborhood that have sold and just, kind of reword the letter, just reaching back out again. I'm not sure if you're curious to, I'm sure you've seen activity in your neighborhood or, you've heard the market. If you have or haven't, out of curiosity, these are what some of the homes similar to your property have sold like. Versus just sending one letter,
Yeah.
and not really having a follow-up with it. And it's tough because if I had a contact to reach them, like email or phone number, I could do so, just double circling back around saying, did you get my letter? What did you think? I have these slots available. Are you available either A or B to jump on a call? So that was a huge aha to me, not just sending one letter and leaving it out, because that can just be, looked at and then pitched away and forgotten, but if I circle back around and I'm like, well, hey, look, this is, the activity in your neighborhood, the area, this is what the market's looking like. And, with what you had mentioned earlier, there is a shift in the market happening. And, I'm sure like some of my buyers, they read the headlines, they read the articles, they see these interest rates, inflation, all these components that can be discouraging to them. But, as long as they get the facts and at least you provide information, I feel like that you build that confidence and that reputation with them. So maybe if it's not the best time to sell now, down the road, if something happens in, their timeline, or, they come around to want to sell, they think of you.
That's huge. So here's something interesting. There's an interesting statistic. If you are bored and you're a nerd like me, there's something called the Harvard Lead Study. And if you Google that, there's actually a couple things that will come up. But one of them tells you that the average lead takes somewhere north of 7 touches to convert. And I've seen that number be as high as 10 to 12. So what you just described there, like you're doing great activities, that aha that you had about the mailer and about the touch program, like if you're doing the right activities, but you're not necessarily falling into the results right away, it could be that you're just not doing enough of them. It's not enough of a system, right? And so to think about that, like, you're just cracking the surface of getting a relationship with those people or establishing rapport, and it might be a little bit more, a couple more touches, and then boom, you start to get those conversions. So we'll talk later about the 8x8 direct, or I'm sorry, the 8x8, the 12 direct, and the 33 touch, which are systems that we can easily implement into our business that will help you systematically do that. So we'll get into some systems that can help you just put it right into your calendar and knock it out. But I appreciate you sharing, and it sounds like you're doing some activities, and the aha there was that there's room for more, which is cool.
Yeah, I'm finding that as I'm doing them, because it's like I'm doing them and I'm doing them consistently. And even though I know they're not all going to be immediate results, but just how to work or how to create, as I'm finding out and seeing what works for me in my schedule, how to create a system to where I can just have this automatically done or minimize my time doing it.
Yeah.
Then I can focus. I do a find, a keep, and a do. Find business, keep business, where I dig into my database, and then do, whether it's I go tour a home, or I actually go out to a coffee shop, the gym, the grocery store, or somewhere where I actually get in front of people. So yeah, a lot of work to be done.
No, that's but it sounds like you already are. It sounds like you're already like cracking into a system. It's just about fine tuning it. And we'll like I said, we'll get to some of that later. And one of the things I was fortunate enough to be able to do for a number of years was I was a coach. I was a MAPS coach, and so working with agents to grow those systems. And I can give you a couple pointers and tips to maybe help you out with that. Anybody else? Aaron, do you want to share anything?
Sure. So I've been working towards some weekly goals as I work on my work-life balance. Like, the reason I'm not in person today is because I have to take my son to his job at 12. So I had to be close to home. So I have weekly goals, and I'm at 50 outbound phone calls. And I'm tracking how many of those outbound phone calls actually turn into conversations. And that's a number and statistic I'm working on for my MAPS coach. And then I have also been sending out farming letters, and as we talked about, prospecting and marketing needing to match. And I talked to my coach about that as well. So she challenged me to door knock one of the neighborhoods where I sent letters to. And I have to say, like, I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around what I'm going to say when I door knock. I've only ever door knocked for an open house. So this will be kind of interesting. And I can't decide if I want to go in with hey, do you want to know what your current condo, it's like a 55 and up community that I need to door knock. So, do you want to know what your condo is currently valued at? Can we set an appointment time? Or if I just want to go in with, I have a very, very, very strong buyer who desperately wants to be in that neighborhood. So I don't know. So that's kind of where I am, but those are my big activities for the week. And And then my weekly goal is to do like 20 hours worth of active sales activity. So not marketing, but actually answering text messages and picking up the phone and dialing the numbers. I do find that if I call and then follow up with a text, I almost always get a reply. And so that's been kind of a good strategy
That's
this
cool.
summer.
Very good. Okay. Bob, do you have any ahas from the exercise? Thanks, Aaron. Thanks for sharing that. And we'll dive into some maybe some strategies that will help you to because I think one of the things that I heard there was you and this is a really common thing, is that you have to have a purpose. The message and the method have to be inspiring to you, because otherwise think about how many hours you're spending a week being in communication with your database. If you're not committed to that, if you don't like it, if you're not even happy with what you're saying to those people, it's really hard to get up in the morning and decide to do it again, right? It's really hard to build a system around that. So even as simple as your door knocking script, it's like you might be better off spending 30 minutes thinking really purposefully about what that script would be and what would be a compelling reason for you to be in their neighborhood and knocking on their door. And if you spend that 30 minutes coming up with a compelling reason, then the 2, 3, 4 hours, whatever it takes to door knock the whole neighborhood, will be much more worth it and much more fulfilling for you, right?
Yeah, no, I agree. And that's definitely, I mean, the time that I've set aside to do that is Sunday afternoon, because just knowing that community, most of them will be coming off of church and so forth. So I have my time set, and now I have to get purposeful about my message and decide what message I think will be better received or will provide better value. So I think
Yeah.
that's kind of where I'm struggling a little bit.
Well, maybe that can be, so at the exercise, what will I do differently in the next 24 hours? Maybe that's your commitment for the next 24 hours, is get that message, like get something that you can live behind, right? Something that you can be committed to. Bob, last one, any shares on this?
Well, since I didn't have any energy the last 4 days, I haven't really done much, but I did actually reach out and make some phone calls. And the hardest part I found about that was actually doing the phone call. But then once I did the phone call, I realized, hey, there wasn't anything really holding me back. People wanted to talk to me. And to some degree, I was tied up with other clients I've been working with. Actually, even though I was, homebound, I was able to set up some essentially get some listings sent to them and do some conversation. I actually am working on a listing as a result of the phone call. I've got some information together for bringing a listing and a buyer together. So, but I love what Juan was doing. I was taking notes while he was talking. I like that, and I need to do more follow up on the phone calls themselves.
That's awesome. That's phenomenal. So talk about knocking out those limiting beliefs. Not that COVID is a limiting belief; it's a real thing. But the idea that you can still keep some momentum behind your business, that tells you just how much is possible. So as I was sharing that, I have that role working in the sales side of the investment company. I'm exposed to some companies, and I'll blow your mind here. I was sitting at dinner 2 weeks ago, which is probably where I got COVID, by the way. I was sitting at dinner 2 weeks ago with a group of people. And the guy that was sitting next to me, he flips 1,500 homes per year virtually. Like all over the place, different markets, not where he lives. And so it's just when you see what's possible out there, when you see the scale of what's possible, that's exciting. And so it's a testament, good job to you for keeping moving forward. And it's also like those communications, those systematic communications are what opens the doors to the possibilities of getting a listing or the possibilities of working with buyers. So that's very cool. Let's dive in. So here's where we are in the course. So you guys have already done, within 3612.3, starting with validity and positioning, prospecting, marketing, and now we're at leveraging a database. So Prospecting and marketing are the two, those are the two activities, right? Prospecting is essentially on the hunt. Marketing is the attraction. And now that we're starting to hunt or attract people, now it's about the database. It's about working the database. It's about feeding the database. So marketing and prospecting help you feed it, but then what kind of communications you're having with your database and what your schedule looks like to do that, that's really what we're going to dive into on this for today. So this is a blank slide. And I think for you, maybe write down, and if each of you could do this, because we do have a small group, and I would appreciate this, it would help me a ton, is write down 1 or 2 things that would make this a great training. So if you think to yourself, what would I like to get out of a class about working my database, write that down. And if you want to share it with me, I would love to hear it. If you don't want to share it, but you know, then at least if we hit the end and you haven't gotten it answered, then we can come back and you can ask it. But let's just identify what would make this a great training experience. I'll give you like 2 seconds to do that. And if anybody wants to share, just pop in.
So Joe, for me, I know there are a lot of like systematic ways to like stay in touch with your database, and I'm not utilizing those to their fullest potential, if at all. So so that was really my purpose for being here today, was to kind of review what those are and then go from there.
Great. I'm making a note, make sure I get it. Systematic ways to communicate. Is that right?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Anybody else? All right. No expectations. Then it means it's easy for me to not disappoint you. Okay. So the power of a database. So I think this is really interesting. Your ability to generate leads and therefore grow your business is tied to your ability to amass and systematically prospect and market to a large database. That's what I was just saying, right? Because you've already come through prospecting and marketing. That we don't leave those behind. Those are part of the growth of the database. So here's a truth. The heart of your business is your database. And the heartbeat of your business is your regular contact with your database. It goes right to what Erin was saying is something that she wants to get out of this, which is the systematic ways to communicate, right? That is what that regular contact is made of. So don't think of your database as a file or a software program or a mailing list. Your database is the record of your business successes and its potential. In other words, it is your business. You'll use it to record contact information for your leads, to track your interactions with them, and assign them to appropriate marketing plans. So those 3 things: recording contact information, tracking your interactions with them, and assigning them to appropriate marketing plans. Those are the key pieces of working with the database. When you hear of doctors or lawyers selling their practice, what do they sell? This is, by the way, if you want like the ultimate gut punch of being in real estate, ask yourself, where's the value of your business? Anybody feeling squirmy right there? That's why doctors or lawyers, when they sell their practice, they're selling their database. They're passing that along to the next company that's buying it, the conglomerate, or the next doctor or lawyer who just wants to buy into their practice or become a partner. So for you as a real estate agent, if you're not building a database that has value, you're a door opener. That's the brutal truth of it, right? It's that because the value of your business is only as good as the next piece of business that you get. Whereas if you're building a systematic database, you have something that's going to continue to pay and actually has a value to it. You can almost know what is predictable revenue to come out of that database. It's a massive difference. So when, what was that, Bob?
Oh, sorry.
Oh, good. So we have like 3 Bobs, I think, at least 2. So when it comes to database tools, here's a couple of the tools that you can help to manage your database. So it's funny, Gary has talked about this many, many times, both like in his books and on stage, but he essentially started with 3x5 index cards. And it doesn't really matter how fancy your CRM or your database is, and we'll talk about that. But it doesn't matter how fancy your database system is, it's about what you're willing to use. So he was like, listen, if it's index cards in a shoebox and that allows you to have alphabetized information, great. If you put it on a spreadsheet, right? I've seen people just using Google Sheets to create the basics of their database. You can use an information manager. So like Microsoft Outlook is an example of that, which gives you more abilities than a spreadsheet. It has the ability to do systematized emails. You can do that. I mean, you can use, by the way, I said Google Sheets, and Google's obviously not paying me a dime for anything, but you can use Google between Sheets, documents, and email and calendar, and it becomes almost a full system for you. I say that if you're refusing to use a true real estate oriented CRM or customer relationship management program or contact management program, you could get away with that because you could just you'd have to piece it together between sheets and documents and all of that. So a database management system or a contact management system, that's when we're getting into CRM. So a contact management system would be something like, I don't know, Command, right? Command would be a solution that would be a part of that. There's others. You could use Follow Up Boss. There's Brivity, and those, Command we get as part of our technology platform. But you could always go out and spend the money to get one of those other ones if you were committed to that. So, is anybody using anything like that specifically right now as a database tool?
So I'll just share really quick. I'm going to age myself, but I started with 3x5 index cards in a sales world long, long ago. And what I liked about that was I was an inside salesperson. So I would come in and pull the cards that I had to call for that day. And it was a stack on my desk. And I would be like, okay, can't go to lunch till half that stack is gone. And it was nice to be able to physically see that number. And then check them off and put them back in their box as I was done and watch that pile dwindle throughout the day. So some of me kind of misses that. I do use Google Sheets to track my really hot leads and anybody I have signed with the listing agreement and so forth. And I do that just to easily track my numbers. And outside of that, I love Command and use Command for my CRM. It's where I record all my notes and all my interactions. And I like that everything is attached to it. Like all the marketing pieces I've sent them is attached. All the opportunities are attached. All the commissions are attached. So I'm a big fan of Command.
Awesome. And what you just described might sound complicated to somebody who's newer to the business or not doing so much. What you just described to me makes perfect sense. Just having seen what agents who were on a growth trajectory or agents who are doing more and more business, like that kind of multi-platform approach is really common. Having a pipeline, right? I would say your Google Sheets is a pipeline. That might be where where you start to identify your 10s, 9s, 8s, your people who are more likely to do business, something where or working clients. That's where that's going to live. Command is just kind of your overall database. That description of that is actually makes a ton of sense to me. Anybody else want to share? Thanks for sharing that, Aaron. And by the way, when I started, I also had stacks. We would get leads we would get leads through the community courier or through Craigslist, and we would print those, and that was what was stacked on my desk. So I totally, and this tells you we didn't believe in long-term follow-up. So I would only keep 3 stacks. It was 3 days worth. If I hit day 3 and they still were alive, they just stayed on day 3. Yeah, that was how we did it, and I'm not proud of that because leads definitely need touched more than 3 times. But that was the world I lived in.
When I first joined Keller Williams, I started using Command right away, trying to get, I took a lot of the training that Katie offered, and also through some of the other marketing, other training for Command. Then I got out of it, and I'm trying to get back into it again. Command does not seem to be very user friendly, looking at it right away, but it is very powerful. I can see where I have all my contacts in there, and I've used it to do some marketing a little bit, but I need to get back into it.
Yeah, and I think that's one of the reasons why this list of options is so interesting. It's because at the end of the day, sorry, my keyboard keeps timing out. There we go. At the end of the day, what is the best type of database tool to use? And I'm pulling this up specifically for you, Bob. The answer is the one that you'll actually use.
Yeah.
It's always disappointing to me, and I'm not saying I'm disappointed in you, but it's always disappointing to me when the technology gets in the way of the actual use, right? Like, and sometimes that's that learning curve. If that learning curve for some type of program is too steep, or the pain of implementation is too steep, you just never get to the point where it's actually worth the trouble. And so if you find yourself on that curve and you make a decision like, I'm bailing on it, doesn't mean you need to bail on working a database. You just figure out what's going to work. If it's just living in a Google sheet and just keeping it simple, then do that, right? Because you're gonna get yourself further along, and then maybe at some point down the road, as you get more comfortable, because if you're learning 2 things, remember, there's 2 things you're learning. You're learning how to be a real estate agent and work a database, and you're also learning how to be a technologist, right? And how to actually run the CRM and run the program. If you're learning both at the same time, it can actually squash your willingness to do either one. So don't let that get in the way. Don't do it. Figure out what you can do every single day that will keep you moving forward, and do that thing. If it's a yellow tablet, by the way, right here, I'll show you guys how low tech I am. I have 2 of them right now. This is what I do. I run like my day-to-day business. Yeah, I have all sorts of Google Sheets and all sorts of stuff. These are I constantly am carrying multiple yellow tablets, and that's where I'm keeping my day-to-day notes of what I need to keep myself straight. So it doesn't have to be fancy. If you go and you buy a 5-pack of legal pads, and that's where you start to live, then you can eventually transfer that over, but at least you've made progress in the meantime. So the answer is the best tool is the one you'll use.
Yeah, the one that works for you.
These are the 4 laws. These are the 4 laws. This is from Gary. Doesn't matter the size of your real estate database. Doesn't matter how long you've been a realtor or any of that. The following 4 laws will help you maintain a focus on daily lead generation. I would write this down somewhere, maybe by your computer, maybe on your bathroom mirror in the morning. Build a database, feed it every day, communicate it with a systematic way, and service the leads that come your way. If you do these 4 things, do you guys think you can succeed in real estate?
Yeah.
It's like, kind of feels really simple, doesn't it?
Yep.
Any part of those 4 seem frustrating or confusing, or something that you're not bought into? No, we're good.
Pretty straightforward.
Pretty straightforward. Well, we're going to go into the laws. We're going to go into the first one. We're going to go into building your database. Here it is. So many agents, when Gary and and his publishing partners were doing their research, when they were first starting real estate, they thought that for sure that the business would just start coming to them. They had always thought of real estate as a business of just showing buyers houses and putting signs in the yard, right? Like I said, if you're not building a database, then unfortunately the quality of your business is that you're a door opener. And I'm not saying that in a mean way. Gary said it right there. So they soon realized that real estate is not just the business of servicing clients. It is first and foremost the business of finding clients to service. And the key to making the most of your lead generation is to build a database of the people you meet in your business. And of course, then stay in touch with them. Over time, that database becomes the engine of your business and it will power your lead generation. It will produce a continuous flow of referrals. And at the end, it's the key financial asset of your business. It is the key financial asset of your business. When Gary says a business worth owning, that's what he's talking about. If you just service Zillow leads, which I'm not saying you don't use Zillow as a way to create relationships or connections, but if that's your core thing and you're not dropping those people into a CRM that you own and you're asking them for referrals that you don't have to pay Zillow on, if you're just servicing, then if Zillow shut the funnel off tomorrow, do you own a business? Sadly, no. You could be a great real estate servicer and still not have a great real estate business. So the size of your real estate business over time will be in direct proportion to the size and quality of your database. Here is a map of where contacts come from. I'm going to leave it on for a second so you can just take a look at all of the possibilities. I see on the right-hand side of Lake database responses to door knocking, right? So that's for Aaron. Aaron, when you go door knocking, like making sure that you have a place to write down a name and a number of somebody. If it's right into your phone into command, then that's cool. If it's you're going to just make a jot a note down at, hey, 123 Condo Lane, and I met Bill and Sally Smith, and they were thinking of selling in the next 6 months. And you just write those notes down, and then you can send them the mail later that says, hey, it was so nice to meet you. I would love to be of assistance for you when you're ready to sell in 6 months. Let's maybe grab coffee and just talk about what those plans look like for you, right? So you're adding the contacts in to Lake database from all of those sources. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Even just looking at this might trigger, hey, I would be down to try something. I'd be down to try a web search or Google AdWords or whatever, right? So just take a look through there. These are the categories of people. So in the red book, there's a really interesting graphic that shows that the outer categories of people for lead generation are haven't mets. Once you've made contact with them, they become a have met, and then they gradually work into your database, and you get all the way down to your core advocates. So regardless of the lead generation source, the contact information you gather can be classified into the two fundamental groups. It's going to be haven't mets or have mets. Haven't mets are, so like Aaron's group for the door knocking, where do they fall?
Haven't met.
Which haven't met group?
That's a pretty targeted group. I mean, if you're looking based on where they live.
That's right. So a targeted group would be people you haven't met and don't know, and it's different from the general public because you've targeted them based on something that you'd specifically like to do, a reason why you'd specifically like to do business with them, like a geographic or demographic connection. Okay. That's really important, by the way, because when we talk about the message or the method, the message or the method might be different for each one of these groups. You might talk to the general public different than, well, I hope you talk to the general public different than you're going to talk to your closest core advocates. If you sent your best friend the same kind of generic message that you sent to somebody in a neighborhood, do you think that your best friend would be like, what the heck is up with that? Right? So understanding the category that the leads are in that you're thinking of adding to your database or working on also helps you identify how to create the message and how to be in relationship with them. The types of business METs and haven't METs can bring to you. So METs, if you know them, if you've met them, they can give you repeat business. They can send you referrals, and you could have met somebody but not done business with them, and they can become new business. If they're in your haven't met bucket, meaning let's just use Erin's door knocking community, which we can continue to use all day. So she can go to them and they can give her new business, right? They can become new business, but she could also go knock on the door and they say, no, we're not thinking of selling, but we do know somebody who's thinking of selling, right? And then all of a sudden they went from a haven't met to potentially giving her a referral. Does that make sense? How large should your database be? So the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book gave us some calculations for how many METs and haven't METs you would have to work with to achieve 320 closed transactions in a single year. 320 closed transactions, not a small number. For that, for the METs, it would assume a 12-to-2 conversion rate if you've put them through an 8x8 touch program, and subsequently also a 33 touch program for 12 months. Likewise, the haven't METs assumes a 50-to-1 conversion rate if you've marketed to them with a 12 direct program over the course of the year. Let's break that down for 1 second. A haven't met person on a 50-to-1 conversion rate, that means that out of 100 names in your database, you might get 2 opportunities. Here's the problem with that. The problem with that is that if you aren't okay getting a no 98 times out of 100 without continuing to do it, you might stop and miss your 2. I think a lot of people brush past that 50-to-1 ratio of conversion and think, oh, you just got to systematically do it. We have to become really committed to the activities of that touch program, of going after those people, because it requires us to be okay with only 2 out of 100 people saying, yeah, I know somebody that wants to sell, or I want to sell. Does that resonate with you guys?
It does. I think this has been my struggle this year, is that statistic was a lot different for me last year. Probably for like every 20 calls that I made, I found 1 really good lead. So if I made 100 calls, that was 5 leads, and those leads did turn into transactions. And this year, that statistic is not the same. So it's been hard to get no's this year, because I was kind of riding high on a wave last year where I didn't get as many as I've gotten this year.
So Erin, I couldn't be any more glad that you shared that, because I think that that's a really massive learning opportunity. If the 3 of you could take this away, it's this: the market shift will lead to an emotional impact for you. Cool, we got Phil here. This is where we are. I'll get you the page then. So that can lead to an emotional impact on you, because the shifting market will change. So that statistic that you just shared, that last year you got 1 lead for every 20 conversations, and now this year it feels different. That's going to fall. That statistic's going to start to fall through other categories. Here's another example. When was the last time you took a listing that didn't sell?
I've never had a listing that didn't sell.
Long time. Bill says a long time. Great. In the MREA, do you know what the statistic is for the number of listings that don't sell?
No.
20%. So we've been out of statistical alignment for so long that we have a lot of people in our industry that have gotten, I would say, addicted to abnormal results, right? Like the number of listings that expire, or the number of deals that fall through, or the number of contacts that it takes to get to a lead. All of those statistics are going to probably start to fall more in alignment with the historical truth. So if you look, and actually where I was last week, the keynote speaker was an economist, and he was showing us a trend line. And the trend line is essentially, I'm just going to boil it down to dummy language that I'm capable of giving. It's like the health of the real estate market, right? So like there's like a healthy pace of appreciation and a healthy pace of transactional movement. We've been so far above the trend line, specifically for the last 3 years since COVID released, that we can't continue. It's like an unsustainable pace, and we're probably going to dip back down to close to the trend line, or maybe a smidge below it, which will feel extraordinarily different than the market we've had for the last 2 years. So there's like an emotion, it's like the brakes are getting put on our emotional response to the business. So Aaron, what you just shared, that's really, really, really important to acknowledge, and it's a real thing. So I think creating systems that are non-emotional help you to get through that. And so that's kind of what that's what I think you'll see here later, is that the concept of that. Because if you go by the math, right, it says essentially, if you follow all of the models and you make 10 new contacts each day and enter them into your database, and you do all the right things, it takes you you can have 960 people in your met database and 8,000 people in your haven't met database, which would basically be a farm or some type of targeted area of people that you don't have a relationship with, but you're trying to communicate with them on a 12 or 8x8 program. If you had 960 in your database and 8,000 in your haven't met database, that statistically speaking would lead to 320 sales. So then it's just a race to get those numbers into your database. If you scale down those ratios for a target of 36 closed transactions over 12 months, and you worked only with met people, since those are the quickest way to get to new business, the calculation tells you need 216 quality people in your met database. However, the danger there is it takes time. There's a time on task factor. So you would have needed to work all 12 of those people from day one, and you probably haven't been doing that. So it's more of an addition factor. So to get to 216 people in your database would probably you wouldn't hit your 36 transactions until going into the second year. Does that make sense? Yeah. So a real met, that was page 13. Yeah, you're good though. It's like a perfect map of that. So it basically a met, there's like 4 categories of mets. There's your networking group, your allied resources, and then your advocates, and it breaks them right down. That's good. This is actually a variation of that graphic from the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, where it talks about going from the outside in, the general public on the outside through your targeted groups. So we've been using Erin's going door knocking on Sunday. We've been using her example. So her door knocking community is a targeted group of the general public. They have a geography in common, that they're in that neighborhood, but she doesn't know them yet, right? And then you go inward from your targeted group to your network. So that might be like maybe, you know, your people in the community who are within your network, but not necessarily like close to you. So those would be considered a met. And then allied resources would be people that you share, resources with. I would say a lender would fall into that. A lender could be an allied resource, or if they're really tight with you, they could be a core advocate or an advocate. So you always want to be moving people towards the center. You want as many core advocates as possible. Core advocates are going to be the power of a core advocate, and what they can do for your business is substantial. This is what this says. Think of them in terms of the 80-20 principle. Out of 20 people, you're going to have 4, 5, or 6 advocates that are going to sing your praises because you've done a couple of good things. Go and discover who your core advocates are. They're going to be the people who will tell others about you in a positive way. I always think of that. Who's in a room that I'm not in that would 100% advocate for me to be the realtor for everybody in that room? And how would you need to be in a relationship with those core people to make sure that that's happening, and to move new people into that bucket, right? If you have a great transaction and you know, like, these people are my fan, I can tell, I know that if they were at a dinner party and somebody was talking about real estate, I did such an awesome job, I know that they would be my advocate. Then make sure that you don't drop the ball on sending them the regular touches, the holiday gifts, right? All that type of stuff, because then they'll just dissipate, going from being your biggest fan, your core advocate after that amazing transaction, and that emotional connection to you will dissipate. And next thing you know, they're not your core advocate anymore. They're just cool, right? They would recommend you, but they're not going to be singing your praises every single time. Does that make sense? So sources for building your MET database. So these are just to think about, like, have you gone through all of these lists? Have you gone through all these categories and thought, are these people in my database? Are these people in Command, my CRM, whatever I'm using? And are they truly in my database? Have I squeezed every drop out of these categories? The next thing is an exercise. So the exercise goes like this. So who knows you already that you may not have thought to add to your database? So we're going to think about that, right? The exercise is really simple. It says, like, listen as I lead you through the exercise, but it's actually really, really simple. So we're just gonna go through, and we're gonna think back to that previous list of people, and we're gonna put a name and an occupation on that page. Okay. So this is page 18. So it's just this. I want you to think of somebody that you have spent time with in the last 2 weeks, who's a friend or a neighbor that isn't in your CRM. Yep. Who's somebody from the school or from the school community, if you have kids, that isn't in your database, is not in your CRM?
Always hard,
Mm-hmm.
man. No matter what.
I like F on that list. People who you do personal business with, like, I mean, your grocery store, maybe not, but like, here's an example. Like, I go to the butcher shop up by the old office, right? Superior Meats. And I'm like, man, I'm in there almost every week, sometimes twice a week if I forget my groceries, right? Like, do they know what I do? Have I asked for their name in a purposeful way? Do I drop goodies off at their office to talk about real estate? Right? It's just like, so when you really dig to that when you surface level think about it, you might be like, I don't know who I do business with that would make sense. But then you can really think about that. Like, there's a name that maybe you don't even know the name of the person, but you do business with them. Maybe there's a favorite coffee shop that you go into and you constantly are in a relationship with them, but you haven't been purposeful about it. And maybe it's not that you're going to spam email them, but maybe you're just going to do pop buys, or maybe you're going to remember them for the holidays. Ryan and I'll tell you, we have developed phenomenal relationships with Members First. They're part of partially funded the building that we're standing in, right? And so those relationships that came from our banking have paid off multiple dividends. And we sent edible arrangements to the branch that we do business with for the holidays. So we took care of the girls at the branch, right? And we sent thank yous, and we've gone to a Hershey Bears game with the commercial lenders, really going deep on those relationships. For us, it's not about getting a listing lead. For us, it's about being able to borrow millions of dollars from them, right? So thinking in terms of what those relationships can do for you for that large scale. Last one, former employees, coworkers, customers, maybe not your previous teammates here, but it could be as something as simple as whatever you were doing prior to real estate. Have you told them? I'll tell you, if you look at real estate, people that kill it in real estate are people that come out of working environments with great communities. We see that teachers do really well. We see that nurses do really well. Because they have tight communities where they're at their previous employers. They usually bond. Nurses do a lot of bonding. It's like trauma bonding because they're going through really tough times at their workplace. And so those relationships are really tight. And so when they come into real estate, they go right back to the people they had a tight community with, and they say, hey, I'm in real estate now. My ex, I still get leads and referrals from the unit that she worked on, because it was like, once you do one or two pieces of business with that group, you're their go-to, you're their person. And when they're all talking around the water cooler. So who can you put down a name or occupation of maybe a former employee or former employer or former coworker or former customer, maybe in another workplace life? And are they in your database? Did anybody have any ahas from that exercise?
So I am the PTO president for my son's elementary school. Well, only one son left in the elementary school now, but that is kind of my ahas. My PTO, not even my board members are in my database. I guess in my head, they're kind of separate, but I just had a referral come across my plate from a previous client. It's his new neighbor that needs some real estate help. And so I called him and we were talking, and I was like, wait a minute, are you Amelia's grandparents? And he was like, yeah. I was like, our kids they're in the same class, and they were at my son's birthday party the day or 2 weeks prior. And I had no idea they needed real estate help. So and then also they were like, oh, you're with so-and-so on the PTO board. And I was like, yeah. So I probably could have found them earlier to help them in their situation if I had leveraged the school better. And I guess in my head, they're just separate jobs. So I haven't done that. So that will be definitely a big takeaway and something I'll have to work on adding to my database.
Well, hopefully that aha comes back and pays you many dividends. That's good. That's a good aha. Anybody else?
I just was what you said about not only the database, but just the fact that for me, yeah, it's true that all our listings are selling. All the numbers have been out of whack. It has felt like easy mode for the last 2 years. It's like I forget how to negotiate a inspection anymore. Yeah.
I was saying at the beginning of the class, I'm coming back in August and we're going to start to teach the shift book again. And I think that's going to be a really, really important class. I think that's going to be really big, because think of how many people, even in the business in general, have come in the last 6 years. I mean, really the last major I mean, COVID was just, it was a weird shift. It was almost like a mechanical shift of, we were forced to lock down and all those other things, and real estate was non-essential. That led to a weird ripple effect. But we haven't had a marketplace shift that was driven by the market since really 08, which then rippled out in like 11. And before that was like the 05 to 07 complete out of control ramp up where interest rates were low. We had adjustable rate mortgages, low credit score lending, all that type of stuff. So I think we have a lot of people that haven't seen one, since that big 08 shift. So yeah, I think that'll be important. But if you look at the trend line back into the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, there's been 4 or 5 significant corrections. And if you take those into account and you look at the trend line in between, we've been out of whack. So, so we have a lot of people that don't know how to have a listing that, like, what, you guys know what the average market time here is? Right now, it's probably under 10 days. What is it historically though? A balanced market is considered 6 weeks. We're like 4.5 weeks shorter than a balanced market. So, so how are you having those conversations with your sellers about what to do at week 3? Probably not, because you haven't had to have that conversation, but we will start to have that conversation. And as we head into that shifting market, we're going to need to be behaving differently. And that includes that's why I was so pumped to teach this stuff, because the database is like the anchor of that. That's the anchor of your business that will, or maybe the rudder of your business is probably a better analogy, because that will steer you through. Your database can pay dividends whether the market's crappy or great, and it's the insulation that you have. Anybody else have any ahas? Aaron has the PTO. Phil shared that the shift conversation was aha.
Yeah, I think I'm going to be experiencing, I have 2 people I'm working with now for listings. And I think because of this shift that's coming, they're going to be kind of an awakening because both of these places require some work, but they're still thinking that they're going to be worth a higher value. So I'm having discussions with them, letting them know about, things are shifting, interest rates are going up. So, be prepared that what you may get an offer for, maybe not what you're expecting.
Yeah. So he's talking about his coworkers and how it's like setting those different expectations. And I mean, so again, it does come back to that relationship that you establish with those people, because then you earn the right to have that conversation with them as a professional. So rule number 1 was building a database. Why does it keep doing this? Rule number 2 is feed it every day. There we go. We just went a whole bunch. What just happened? There we go. So we're going to page 22, expanding your database, expanding your Met database. So these are some of the actions that you need to be doing in terms of feeding the database every day. It's the simple stuff, right? It's like, and making sure that these are built into your calendar. The key to adding Mets to your database and feeding your database every day is to be proactive and to make sure that you're prospecting and marketing with consistency. So it's simple stuff like phone calls and personal visits with past customers or people in your sphere of influence, meeting new people through school, church, neighbors, sports, hobbies, PTO, right, Aaron? Open houses, so it's interesting to look here and think like how many of these have been taken away from us because of the market. Open houses have been taken away. For sale by owners can sell, right? So they didn't feel the urgency to list their properties. Expireds almost didn't exist. the open houses have completely changed because most of the people that were coming to open houses statistically had a licensed agent representing them, and they were coming to the open houses out of desperation, thinking that they'd be able to get a deal, right? I mean, I'm just generalizing, but you guys acknowledge that some of those things are what we saw in the market. But as it changes, some of these things might open up. You might actually see some more expired listings. You might see that for sale by owners who thought that the market was going to just knock it out of the park for them and they could just put a sign in the yard or put it on Craigslist and it would sell. Maybe that doesn't happen anymore. So maybe they do start to open up to being willing to meet with you to list their house. So be paying attention to the sources that you want to go to for expanding your database, and be willing to change as the market changes what's available to you.
Hey, Joe, can I ask a question about internet leads?
Yeah.
So I get a lot of internet leads from the Facebook ads that I do, and some of them are just flat out incorrect, or the email might work, but the phone number doesn't. Like, do you think those are worth keeping in your database if you can't like connect with them?
That's a really good question. I personally like to create a second category. I think we are sold the idea that that's a lead. I think it's actually just a contact. It's not even a lead until we make contact with it and identify that it actually has these types of things. If we can't put, I don't know that you need all 5 of these. Obviously, you're not going to get a business card. If you can't get 3 out of these 5, you probably don't actually have a lead.
Okay.
Do you see the things that are on the screen right now? Their name, address, phone number, email address, and business card?
Yes. Yep.
So I would argue, I think the internet has done that to us. Like we spend, our budget for web and SEO is like $20-some thousand a month. And we see a ton of what we call partials, which would be like, maybe it only has 1 thing, or maybe it has 2 things. And like, you know, they're not a real, they didn't really intend to be added to your database. They were just scrolling the internet, or they're scrolling on Facebook, and Facebook now has that autofill feature. And so you get old data, or you get like their old college email address or whatever. And is it really a lead? Do they really have any intention of doing business? Probably not. Right. And so just, I would be aware of that. And so for me, I actually separate that out into a contact versus a lead. And a lead has to have, like I said, 3 out of these 5.
Okay.
Is that helpful?
Yes.
Okay. Here's a technique that you can use to, here you go. Congrats on your closing. To help you build the relationships and add these people in and be able to create rapport quickly. This is the Ford technique. This is out of bold, but it's family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. We actually just talked about this yesterday. This is on page 24, by the way. So this technique allows you to quickly build rapport and to gather information, which then you can put into your CRM. So family, occupation, recreation, and dreams. So again, as you're seeing there, like number 3, spouse's name, that's a family. Their recreation might be their hobbies and interests. Their kids, right? People love to talk about their kids. Kids are a big reason to move, whether they're moving out of the house or whether you're having new ones. So that's really important. If we had more in person, I would do this where we would break out and do buyer and seller data. But as you move forward in building your relationships with your contacts and conducting a listing consultation, you need to gather specific information. So rather than do the full exercise, if you go to the next page, which is 26, so page 25 and 26 is that whole exercise. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to have each person who's in the class, either in person or online, participate. What I'd like you to do is give me an example of a question that you would ask to somebody to get information that you could put into your database. So what's an example of a great question that you could ask that would open up that conversation and open up that rapport? So if you're looking at the list of information on page 26, which is like, you know, a lot of technical things like, you know, owning or renting or children's names, children's date of birth, like those types of questions, right? Rather than just asking them, like, rather than just sitting there at like you're grilling them or interviewing them like the FBI, how could you ask questions that would get those answers? So everybody, I'm gonna have everybody give me one shot. So we have Bob, Aaron, Juan, whoever wants to go first. What's an example of a question? Just shoot it out.
I don't have the pages in front of me. I still can't locate the download, but one of the questions I would ask is what are you looking for in your next property?
What are you looking for in your next property? Great question. All right, Aaron, Juan.
It's summertime and travel time, so I've been asking people where they're going on vacation and who they're going with.
Awesome. Hey, do you have any fun plans for the summer, and who are you going with? Awesome.
Mine is, what is your favorite feature about your current home, and why do you, or who you live with, love it so much?
That's a great one. What's your favorite feature of your current home? I love that. Fahad, we practice questions all the time. What do you have?
Is there anything that you would like to do in regards to adding to your home?
Okay, cool. I have one. So desired move date. My question for that would be, hey, in an ideal timeline, when would you like to be in your new home? That helps answer a lot of questions. When should we get pre-approved? When should we start looking? When should we plan closing, right? All those types of things come into play there. So when you're feeding your database, these are the things that you want to be thinking about. Adding contacts, when to enter contacts, updating contact information and contact history. So I think that one of the things that's really important to think about here is entering the contacts. You can enter them at any time, but generally speaking, you want to do it the sooner the better. You want to get those names in there. You don't want to be stockpiling Post-it notes of people that you want to be adding, and they're not actually getting into the database. I think this goes to the importance of having, the whole idea of this class, this 3612-3. The 3 is that you want to have 3 hours of lead generation and follow-up time every day for 12 months to have 36 transactions. That's what the 3 means. So if you have 3 hours of lead generation and follow-up time in your calendar every single day, when you're sitting there, you're going to have the time to add the contacts. You're going to either find the time to add the contacts, and if you already have added everything that you've got, then you go out on the hunt and you go to find more people. So I think that helps a lot of that. And then keeping a record of it. We talked a little bit earlier about CRMs versus systems versus just having a sheet or even 3x5 note cards. I think that regardless, you want to make sure you're keeping things up to date, and you're making sure that you're adding value to your database, that it's actually worth something. Here we are. Aaron's ask for this class was systematic ways to communicate, and we are going to talk about that here. So the power of one principle for the 3612-3 states that you should lead generate for 3 hours every workday. If you work on your database during this time block lead gen time, your database will continue working for you throughout the week, month, and year. First, the beginning of the 3 hours. Use your database to identify and prioritize the appointments, phone calls, letters, postcards, and other activities you need to complete during your lead gen time. So essentially, the first thing you do is you identify what you need to do, okay? What's the most important thing to do? And then the end of your 3 hours, at the end of your time block, you update your database while the results of your lead generation are fresh on your mind. So updating any contacts that you've gotten and adding any new ones that you found along the way. Okay. So that's taking your time and putting it to good use. Here is an overview of systematic marketing. Aaron, take a picture of this screen. So for haven't met people, we're going to do 12 direct. So the 12 direct is going to be, and it says it's direct mail, but it could be email, it could be hard mail. It's 12 direct, meaning 12 direct things at them that you want to go from a haven't met to a have met. I would encourage you, Aaron, before you go door knocking, that you have a plan to follow up on the same community. So if you know what community you're targeting and you just think you're going to door knock, that's only one touch. That's not enough. So if you go into it knowing what your script is for this, right, which is I have a buyer for the neighborhood, they're highly qualified and highly motivated to get in here. And then you go through. The next thing you might want to do, and I'm just throwing out an idea, is you might want to send a letter to the neighborhood that says, hey, my name's Aaron. Many of you met me as I was working in the community over the last weekend. I'm following up because I wasn't able to connect with everybody. And I just wanted to ask, are you thinking of selling, or do you know anybody who's thinking of selling? Because I still have a buyer for the neighborhood. Now you went from one touch to two touches, right? And then you
So
can figure it.
I started with the farming letter. So a letter, they've already received one letter from me.
Cool. Well, then
So
maybe
the door knock will be the second touch. So would you send a third letter as like a,
yeah.
okay.
Yep. I would follow up. I'd say, hey, sorry, either sorry I missed you, or or whatever, right? Like, I was in the community over the weekend. I absolutely, like, what a phenomenal time. So many people were so gracious to chat with me, but I just wanted to follow up because I still need your help. I still haven't found a home.
Okay.
Right? You see that? Like, you're creating a dialogue with them. That's how that system starts to be built. I would challenge you that part of your 3 hours of lead generation and lead follow-up, you also probably want to create brainstorming time where you're actually doing the building of your systems. Like, when I was MAPS coaching, like, we would have our 33 touch and our 12 direct and our 8x8, they would be built out at least a quarter to 6 months in advance. So that way it didn't require you reinventing the wheel or thinking of it off the top of your head every week. Like, if all you're doing, if you've already thought ahead, then your dialogue has a pace to it that makes sense. Your touches make sense, right? So like, if you're going to do an ice cream social in August and you don't start to send invitations out until July 30th or whatever, right? You're going to miss that opportunity. Whereas if you send a touch in July, in the beginning of July, that says, hey, keep your eyes peeled for a really exciting announcement later in the month. And then later in the month, you send another touch that says, hey, here's the announcement. I'm having an ice cream social and you're invited. And then the week before the event, you send out a text message that says, hey, I wanted to make sure that you RSVP'd to my event. And then you have the event, and then you have a post-event touch that says, hey, we had such an awesome turnout at the ice cream social, and you include a picture of like the 17 people that came eating ice cream. Now you just went from one thing, which was the ice cream social, and you built 6 touches into that, and you could have designed that 2 to 3 months in advance. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Is that helpful to think of it that way?
Yeah, it's helpful. Now I just have to figure out how to do it.
It's just, that's it. You just, so start to, so my suggestion for you is to start to put big rocks in the ocean or in the river, right? Think of the big events that you want to work around. Maybe put a big rock around the holidays like Christmas or whatever, and then put something in the summer or what have you, and then just start to build your touches in around it. Yeah.
I have a question. Can we take this approach for sale by owners?
You could take it with anything. Yep. Are for sale by owners a have met or haven't met? Mm-hmm. Yep. There's some urgency to a for sale by owner though, right? Because if you think you're going to send them 12 letters over the course of a year, they're going to be sold in 60 days, right? So if you want to put a plan in place to go after a for sale by owner, you probably need to make sure that you plan that ahead. Like I said, you don't want to reinvent that every time a for sale by owner comes up, and you have to figure out what 6 touches you want to do. They're going to be long gone, and you're less likely to do it because you have to put that thinking in. You want to get the thinking out of the way, so that you're just acting. And I'm not saying that in a mean way. You just, you know. So here's some systematic touches. Bob, I know you don't have the papers in front of you, but for everybody that does, page 31. So the categories are haven't met and have met. And under haven't met, you want to do that 12 direct. So that's going to be direct mail marketing pieces you send out once a month over a 1-year cycle, and then it begins again. So if you're farming a neighborhood or a community, or if you have some type of demographic you're going after, doing those 12 touches. Under the Mets, so Mets would be anything from your network all the way into your core advocates. You want an 8x8 and a 33 touch. An 8x8 is defined as this. It's 8 touches over the course of 8 weeks after you first meet them, after you first make contact. So when you first get somebody, so the PTO person is a great example, Aaron, right? Aaron makes a connection with somebody at the PTO, and she touches them 8 times over 8 weeks. Then she puts them into a 33 touch, which is a 1-year cycle of 33 pieces of communication. That's not just sending them 33 postcards or letters. It could be a text message. It could be in person. It could be that whenever you see them at a meeting, like if it's PTO, for example, that you make it a point to just go up and say, hey, right? It's just a quick in person, but then you're just cementing that relationship. So 8x8 cements it in the first 8 weeks, and 33 touch maintains it over the course of the year. All 3 of these have a common theme: overkill over time, because no matter how much frequent and systematic lead generation is emphasized, most real estate agents still tend to underdo it. Your goal is to outtouch other agents. Here's the benefits of systemization. Consistency. Systematized marketing delivers your branding and unique selling proposition in a nearly identical fashion to potential clients over time. You want that consistency. If you give amazing service to the daughter and she's like, oh my gosh, they were like right on top of it. I got great notes and cards, and they delivered this gift after closing. And then the daughter recommends you to grandma, and you give an inconsistent experience. Like grandma doesn't get the gift after closing. Grandma doesn't think that you touched her nearly as many times as you did the daughter. You're missing that value proposition that you were offering, and now neither of them believes that you're actually going to do it. Predefined. You want it predefined. You want everything pre-made. The scripts, letters, notes, and other mailing pieces you use should be pre-made. Not that they're canned, by the way. Don't send junk, but you want all you have to do is internalize a message once to be able to deliver it countless times. So items that you mail can exist as a template, and then all you have to do is fill in the pertinent contact information and then send the piece out. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You want things to be repeatable, right? This is what I was talking about. The more you use your scripts for phone calls and visits, the better you'll get at delivering them. Once you find printed mailing pieces and items of value that work for you, then you can continue to use those on a repeatable basis. And automatic. If you apply the systematic marketing plans within a contact management system or CRM, right? Or you find other ways, right? So like for postcards, maybe you use Quantum Digital or whatever. Then once you figured out those automated systems, then you can continually do that, and it becomes on autopilot. There are professional pre-made things with KW, and you can find a lot of stuff through Command. Has a lot of templates that you can use, and on KW Connect, you can also find other things. The 8x8. This is the entry point. This is the beginning of cementing a relationship for a met. This is when somebody goes from a haven't met to a have met, and you apply it immediately. So the 8x8 is a combination of personal visits, phone calls, items of value that are dropped off, and a handwritten note. And there is a suggestion of items of value that you could use. And there's a basic 8x8 plan on page 33 of the handout that would lay it out there. So week 1 is sending or dropping off a handwritten note. Week 2 is contacting them by phone. Week 3 is sending an item of value, which again, there's the list of items of value that you could do. Week 4 is contacting the individual to quickly touch base with a little bit of a phone script. Week 5 is dropping off another item of value. Week 6 connecting with them to quickly touch base again and ask if you can help or ask if they have a referral. Week 7 is another item of value, and week 8 is another quick touch. You can see it's just quick hitters. You're not actually stalking them because you're not actually calling them other than maybe every other or every 4th week for those 8 weeks. So it's not over the top. I think it's a great way to solidify the relationship. There's a customized 8x8. So you could develop a customized 8x8 for a lot of different sources. You could do it for geographic farms, demographic farms, your sphere of influence, FSBOs, all those. And all of these would help to get in the habit of just being in relationship with people. Those are good ideas though. The next one's the 33 touch. So the 33 touch is the systematic marketing and prospecting technique that ensures a year-round communication. So here's a quick cheat. You get 12 months. So 12 of your touches could just be a monthly newsletter or email, right? Or maybe it's 12 emails of like monthly updates. You can even regurgitate the RAAC information and put it on a pretty format and send it out, right? Have it in your calendar that you know what day the RAAC information is probably going to come out, and set it for like 3 or 4 days later in case they're late. And that's your day that you're going to turn that into a nice, pretty flyer. And now every month you're sending that data out for market information, right? People like that. They like that you become the expert. So that's 12 touches right away. So now you're down to 21 touches left. Then you could do holidays. You could do thinking of you notes or cards. You could do personal holidays like Mother's Day, Father's Day, their kids' graduation, their kids' birthday, those types of personal things. Next thing you know, you only need to actually do manual touches for 6 to 8 of these. It's not that much. But you have to have all that stuff pre-built, or you have to have a system to do it. Once again, that's how it could look. There's the three keys to achieving success. Be consistent, be personal, and be long-term. The trick there is being personal is hard with also being automatic. So if you're going to create some type of automatic drip campaign, it can be a little hard to make sure that it has your personal voice to it, right? So just be aware of that. And make sure that you're balancing that. There's a quote on the sheet that says the mistake that a lot of people do is they do one mailing and they sit back and wait for the phone to ring. And that is not going to happen. So it does take consistency. You do a decent amount of internet lead stuff, right? Or we're doing that.
Still doing, yeah.
Yeah, like that's another, like there's a, so I was talking about the Harvard lead study at the beginning of this. There's also a Harvard Business Review study that they did that found that the average response time for a web-based retailer was 42 hours from the time that they put a contact form in. So like being quick and being repeated, like being diligent about that and putting in a system in place, and you can automate a lot of that stuff for that web-based stuff. Same for you, Aaron, with the Facebook leads, making sure that you're quick and personal. And like maybe it includes a video that just says, hey, it's Aaron, I got your contact. I'm so excited to connect with you. What's a good time, right? Or whatever. That feels personal, but it can also be automated. Those types of things go a long way. The last one is a 12 direct system, which is just a series of direct mail pieces that are sent to a haven't met group targeted at one time per month over a cycle of 12 months. I think that we got, again, kind of spoiled by the speed of the market, and we felt that we didn't need to do some of these long-term, slower things that require discipline. I do expect that it's going to come back, that we're going to need to do these things. So putting that in motion, I think, would be huge. Here's something that I wanted to read off, which is branding versus junk mail. There's a fine line between promotion and junk mail. Some things to watch out for: maintaining a physical presence within your target group. If they can't associate what you send with a real person, what you send will likely be thrown away. If you send emails too frequently, they may be perceived as spam, and the recipient will probably block future emails from you. Here's something to do. If you're using an email program that that tracks the open rates, always look at that, because if your open rate is low or your spam filter is high, you might be doing all this work to create this email template and it's not going to anybody. What do you use for email? You use BombBomb. BombBomb will give you that report, right? Anybody else using something else as a service for emails? You can use, there's programs like Constant Contact. Anybody doing anything with these, or are you just doing it out of command?
I'm just doing it out of command.
Yeah. So making sure, why do you say emails are a pain in the ass? The content is hard. You got to put time into preparing the content. Yeah, I know. I think that's an underestimated pain in the butt, is like beetle. Used to be a beetle. Is like time blocking content creation is a big deal. A lot of people, especially like you know, the YouTube influencers, that type of stuff, they're constantly putting time into creating content. Okay. Make sure that whatever you send has the most value add for the recipient as possible. Okay. So systematizing the database. There's a Gary Keller video on KW Connect where he talks about his box, his 3x5 box, and essentially we're gonna skip it because I want to keep moving along. We have 15 minutes or so, and I want to make sure that anybody has any ahas or questions, we have time for that. But essentially, one of the things that he talks about, and this is what I was saying with you, Bob, earlier. Bob was sharing that sometimes the technology is a hurdle, right? And this talks about that, right? Avoiding the technology trap. When technology intended for convenience actually ties us down and steals our time. So make sure that the point of having a database is to systematize and automate the way you take action and seek business. Whichever system you use, you don't want to spend a lot of time every day configuring the technology. Your database must not become an excuse for not doing the work. And then it says ready, fire, aim is better than ready, aim, and never firing, right? So sometimes you just got to do the action and then clean it up a little bit later. So Bob, that's what I was saying. Like in terms of if command feels overwhelming to you, start with something that doesn't feel overwhelming. And then eventually, if you need to take that database and drop that into command, that's the aim. But at least you fired, at least you were doing the work. We're gonna skip that exercise. Everything. Let's talk about that. Do you guys want to talk about that for a second?
I can't hear what he said.
So Phil said that he thinks that one of the hardest things right now is actually getting engagement from these touches.
Oh, absolutely.
I'm gonna do something. I'm gonna change to this mic.
Check. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Phil, try to speak.
Hello.
Can you hear Phil?
Yes.
Hello. Testing 1, 2,
All
3.
right. I switched it to the room mic.
Your voice is perfect for testing.
Phil has that booming voice. So let's have a conversation about that. Let's have a conversation about getting engagement, because I think we've gotten a lot out of this class so far, just in terms of the systemization. This talks about systematic communication, but let's talk about engagement. How do you overcome that hurdle? How do you overcome that challenge?
I did something recently and I didn't know.
Just make sure you speak up.
I just did something recently to overcome that hurdle and I didn't even know I was doing it. For me, the best touches are in person, but social media, I work with Joe at Integrity First as well. And one of my partners over there is Mitch. And I posted a video about basketball. It got over like 2,000 views. And people were commenting, and then I snuck in there. Oh, all right. Hey, when you guys are ready to sell, let me know. Or are you looking to sell? But that had nothing to do about real estate. That was a natural contact that I was able to take advantage of for real estate. And it was pretty cool to see. That's one way I was able to overcome that hurdle.
Yeah, that's cool. Anybody else? Like what kind of hurdles are you seeing in terms of engagement?
People not responding back.
Yeah, like email, it's like almost, I feel like it's very low response. I mean, to a custom email, social media postings, I mean, that's a whole nother, what I care about, I feel like no one else cares about. It's, I feel like what I think is good to know, like people don't really care.
So what do people care about? What would they respond to?
People like comedy. One person in Keller Room does a great job is Jeremy Tolley. I'm not sure if he's on, but he's informative, but he makes it fun and funny about the situations. That's what I think. It's like when you're super serious or just like reading something to people get zoned out or bored out quick. What he does, literally, he's still putting out the content about real estate, educating people, but he's making memes or playing role plays with himself. That's what, like, as me as a consumer, I'm like, man, I'm gonna keep watching this guy's video just because it makes me laugh.
Yeah.
Well, like I agree with you on that. That is not me, who I am.
Right.
So like I struggle with doing things that are like, oh, I should be doing this, but that's not my personality.
Mhm.
Like this is my personality, you know, which is maybe
More
I don't-
reserved.
more reserved.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know.
Yeah. I think that's a real thing, and that to me is like why the need to be very intentional and proactive about creating the content and really put that thought into what kind of touch program you want to have. Like the reality is, and you know, Aaron, I think you're a great example because you've been vulnerable about what you're working on with the door knocking in the neighborhood, but also with like the touches around your database and wanting to systematize it. Like if you just sat down with a blank sheet of paper and said, if I was a consumer in my database, what would I want? How would I want to be communicated with over the course of the year? What would get my attention? What would I respond to? And then just start to map that out. Like that's not, it seems like it's a task that's a little in left field of the rest of this, but it's actually probably the most important. Because if you send 12 emails that are canned emails that you downloaded off of KW's website or whatever, and your open rate is 5%, and you have, let's say you have 400 people and you have an open rate of 5%, how many people actually saw it?
Probably nobody. I mean, I never open up a canned email I get from a lender.
Yeah.
Like I literally forward them out into a separate folder.
Yeah. So that's the thing. You could build a system and have zero result from it because the quality of what the effort you put into the system was so low that you got nothing out of it. So I think there's something to be said for that. It's like, you know, you could pre-film some of the video content if you wanted to do video content. You could be very personal about the text templates, and maybe it takes you a little bit longer in your time block to copy and paste that text message out to get it to go to the people where they actually open it. But by doing that, your open rate goes up, so your results better. Does that make sense? Is that helpful to think of it that way?
So you're saying be intentional, like when you're doing.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm getting.
Aaron, what, I saw you come off mute. What did you think?
I was gonna tell Phil that when I think of Phil and his posts on Facebook, the ones that are most memorable to me are the pictures that he takes with his drone and all of those. So you might not need to be comical and as outspoken as Jeremy, but you could really build something around the photography that you're doing that makes people know you. And once they feel like they know you, there's a bigger trust. And and people would open your newsletters if you had photography tips or, just whatever. It doesn't even need to be real estate related, or you can incorporate both, but you have a really special niche there, and you could really kind of take it to the next level without altering your personality at all, or really pushing yourself too hard, because you're already doing it.
That's a really good aha. I'm not sure if he can hear you, so.
We could, yeah, I didn't hear.
And he just stepped out. So I'll share that. I'll share it with him when he comes back in. But I agree. Like, so, and think of that, right? Like maybe for him, it's like if you got a weekly or monthly, maybe you got a monthly email with a really cool drone shot, you'd open that because you wanted to see where's Phil? Maybe the subject line is where's Phil, right? And it's a cool drone shot, and then that's the type of thing, right? So that like you see that it took you 30 seconds to share that. It took 2 minutes of just thinking out loud of like what could that do for a touch plan, and now you've actually got something that's going to be open, that's got value, that's interesting. And so I just encourage that to be something that you guys put some time into.
What did she say about personality, Joe, if you don't mind me asking? She was cutting out.
What did you say about personality?
I just said that he could still, like, he can be himself. He doesn't have to go up and above over the top like Jeremy does, to be funny or whatnot. Like Phil stands out in his own way with just the stuff that Phil does anyway.
You're
So he doesn't
absolutely
need
right.
to,
What about that?
he doesn't need to change. And I think once people know your personality and they know you better, then they trust you more because
Yeah.
they feel like they already know you.
That's a key right there, is to creating that rapport and that trust. People are getting to know you through these touches. If they're getting to know you through the touches, and the way they're getting to know you is that you're not original, that you're sending them things that are annoying, that you're actually devaluing your relationship. So it is really important that you put thought into what the system is going to look like for your touches. I put a slide up there that says, I don't have enough leads to bother with a contact management system. I think that's huge. Most agents in the growth phase of their career are managing 20 to 80 leads at a time. With just 20, it's difficult to keep contact information up to date. Imagine doing that with 80, and imagine doing that once your database passes a couple hundred, and now you're dropping the ball on that communication, and how that makes people feel like they are less important, right? Or that the relationship is less valuable. It talks about, the reason I didn't want to dive into some of this stuff was because it's about the old CRM, which was EDge before Command. I think this was important. What about unresponsive contacts? Put them on a 12 direct plan, and then put them on an email only plan. We saw this within the last week. One of the employees over at Integrity First, she resurrected somebody who had been an email only lead 2 years ago. And they finally came back around, and we actually got an appointment for this week. Something just in terms of this is kind of like a little bit of a warning. When someone says they want to opt out of communication, record that and stop it immediately, and make sure that you have respected that. I think there's some litigious people out there that will come after you for harassment. With the do not call legislation, you absolutely can't, you don't want to do anything. There's anti-spam and do not call. It is illegal to do so. Penalties can range from being kicked off the internet to fines in excess of 11,000.
Yes.
I've actually
Off the internet?
Yeah, so I actually am reading a book right now. You would love this book, by the way. Yeah, I'm sure you've read another of his books, Traffic Secrets by Russell Brunson. He wrote.
Yeah.
He wrote that. This is a phenomenal book. He got kicked off of his ISP, his internet service provider, when he was first getting into the business because of that exact thing. So a lot of the internet service providers have a basically, like when you sign your agreement to get on the internet, like they actually have a clause in there that talks about spamming, and you can't use their internet service provider to spam. And so you can get kicked off the internet.
I'm just getting out of business. Screw this.
This is too hard. So I just a word of warning for that. So the last piece of it is this, which is servicing all the leads that come your way. I think this is actually the easy part, and this is where like this is the part you want to get to. Like this, when I think of this class, like all the other stuff is the boring hard stuff of putting the systems in place. I'm not saying that from a negative spot. I'm just saying that from an honest, like vulnerable place. Is like I get excited about servicing the leads, right? I wanna work those leads, I want to take them out, I want to work on, showing them homes and all that, getting that stuff done.
But the actually the boring part that we just spent the last hour and a half on is where all the money's made. It's where the systems and process are really critical. But once the leads come in, there's a fast track, which is funnel. Now, so this is, I'm gonna give you the reasoning. So funnel is the leads are funneled into a single point of entry for the business. You want them to come to one place where you know to get all your opportunities. Assigned, leads are assigned to the appropriate plan. S for source, leads are sourced in order to calculate the return on investment for various prospecting and marketing. So I was having a conversation with a friend of mine, and she was sharing with me some frustration about her P&L. And so I had her send me, this is the kind of friends I have. I made her send me her P&L specifically around her database. She had a 12-to-1 ROI on her database spend. She spent like $18,000 last year, and she made like $150,000 from her database. At 12-to-1, what does that tell me? What does it tell you?
It's really good.
It's really good. It's actually too good. She's underspending. Because if she spent a little bit more, she might go to a 10-to-1, but she'd probably increase her results, right? So it's already her number one lead source. She should put more money into that. So that was an interesting conversation. So sourcing your leads and tracking the leads and the results and the revenue helps you make better decisions. We do that all the time. Yeah.
Do you think that, like, one thing I always struggle with the online and database stuff and like everything is, I feel like this is a myth in the Gary Keller book, but like, I feel like I would assume that in bigger markets where there's more like,
Competition?
well, no,
Market share.
people where they're, I feel like your county is really mom and pop, right? A little bit more old school sometimes. They don't respond to the online stuff as well.
So I think there's,
Versus like a West Coast city.
Yeah, I get that.
the
I think there's
demographic.
some truth to that. I think
Yeah.
there's some, so I think like, and I have an interesting perspective because I have the Pittsburgh office where I see like there's a different mindset, like there's a different vibe out there. Certain things that work there wouldn't work really amazing here, but I think it's really figuring out what works for your market and what you're willing to do.
Yeah.
I do think that there's some truth to that. Like, a great example, like we've seen a couple, Jeremy Tolley put some billboards up. Do you think that like, and I have no judgment, and I would ask Jeremy this question to his face. Do you think it's weird that he's super high tech with TikTok and also super old school with a billboard? Or is he spreading himself to make sure that, because people that are on TikTok, like they're gonna see it regardless, they're gonna see the billboard regardless, but people that aren't on TikTok, I think it's actually super smart that he's doing the billboard as well, because it lets him get in front of other people more in an old school way, mom and pop style, right? So I think that there's something to be said for that.
To your point, and to what you said, that's a great statement, by the way, is it depends on your target market. Like if they're older folks or baby boomers, maybe not send them emails because they won't use that. Maybe a note card, like a written end card. So we just have to keep that in consideration when we do our strategies. Like what target market are we working with?
Yeah.
And Jeremy's, like his example was perfect. Because I know Jeremy, I know he did that intentionally. Because I've seen that billboard and I watch his TikTok and billboards, but there's a lot of older folks that don't get to see his
They're not
TikTok.
right. Older people aren't gonna see his TikTok, and the only way he's gonna get in front of them is through the billboard. And then when the older people see his web stuff, which I know he does some web funnels, like now it's gonna start to connect. I think that's really, really smart way to get across demographics. So I think there's some truth to what you said in terms of like just the vibe of a community. And you just gotta make sure you're thinking ahead of that.
One other thing, not to like bring up Jeremy again, but on his billboard, it says move for free. Like I guess he's paying when he gets listing to move. And I didn't, like, I was like, damn, that's pretty like strategic. I didn't know we can do that like legally. I didn't know. That's why I was like, maybe do that in the future and ask some questions about this and get.
I would ask questions before you do it.
Yeah, gotta get more
It's a
information.
call to action. I mean, there's tons of people, there's tons of marketing hooks out there, right, that get the phone to ring. So I have no idea what the small print is behind Move for Free. So
Gotcha.
All right, we're gonna wrap up here. I think that's Aaron in the chat saying she had to hop off, is my guess. Yeah. And Aaron accomplished her goal, which was to talk about systematic ways to communicate. So we did that. Any last minute questions or ahas? I'd love for everybody to share at least one thing, just small group, you know, just a handful.
I have a question.
Yeah.
No one's answering, talking. One of the things I struggle with my database is keeping it consistent, especially when you have a team and you're trying to like teach everybody like how to properly organize stuff. So I always tell people like, if you don't tag your stuff or source it, you might as well just rip all the pages out of the phone book and throw it on the floor.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like, it's just such a struggle to get everyone to be consistent with every lead, you know, and like say where it comes from, you know, put it in the right pool or whatever it is.
So some of that can be automated. I'll say, you know, like, well, at Integrity First, like, we get a tremendous amount of data at all
I bet.
times. And so we run in Salesforce over there, which is very, very complicated CRM. And, but what we've been able to do is like, we can automate it. So if it's like coming from a web source now, like it'll automatically tag it that way, and then it'll automatically assign it. So I would try to figure out as much automation of that stuff as you can, where like the assignments are automated. I've seen on a lot of teams or Rainmaker teams where the Rainmaker wants to control the assigning process, but that becomes a bottleneck, right? So it's like figuring out what you can automate versus what you still want to have some level of control over. And then honestly, man, set those expectations and hold those people to those expectations. They're going to cost themselves and you money by not treating the database with the respect that it needs to get. Like Fahad will tell you, I'm merciless when it comes to that. Like, he's like,
No, it's like if it doesn't happen in Salesforce, our saying is if it didn't happen in Salesforce, it never happened. Like we put everything in.
we have a t-shirt that says if it didn't happen in Salesforce, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
Because like, it's literally, we made that t-shirt.
That's hilarious.
And to your,
Because like the database is everything. It's everything. And so like if you're gonna have the marketing budget that we have or that you guys have or generate those opportunities and leads, and you're not gonna respect what happens once you generated it, you're lighting that money on fire. Exactly. Yeah. So I get it. I would just and I would be, yeah, I would be diligent about documenting that stuff so that you can do it. And I would go really deep into your CRM about what can be automated so that you don't have to.
here's a joke that I'm being
Just do it
serious.
for me, Joe.
No, but those people that don't want to do it, like say they didn't get that lead and somebody else sold it or bought it, they're gonna be like, oh shit, I missed out on business. People do move and make action when their money is affected. I'll just leave it at that.
Yeah. Anybody else? Bob or Juan?
So how many weeks will we be doing this for?
This is the fourth class of this session. And it runs through July.
End of July.
We don't see you.
This is the only session I'm teaching in Richard. Anybody online?
Hey, Joe, thanks for the class. That's always get something out of these sessions.
Cool. My pleasure, man. Thank you.
I don't have a comment or question. This was just very informative for me because I was scared I wasn't going to have time because of the closing, but coming in here just put me back in that student mindset of what I need to work on for me and my team. And that's how I'm taking this whole stuff to keep working on and grow from.
Yeah. Like this type of content is. All right, I'm gonna shut it down. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe.